All right, thank you for watching Drum Circle News. Today I have an awesome cameo with Alexander and Rama. They're from Home for Humanity. Thank you for joining me in my ancestral lands. We're out here in Requa today, which is the mouth of the river, Klamath, California, right where the Yurok tribe land starts. And so I'm glad that you guys came out. Would you mind sharing with my audience what you guys are doing with Home for Humanity?
Very well. Well, first of all, Dylan, it's such a pleasure to be on your show and to be on Yurok land. And Home for Humanity is a planetary movement for human flourishing and for planetary regeneration. And the movement is at the moment on a 7-year expedition. On a 7-year expedition to every country on the planet to surface, to work with, to share with the world what is the wisdom, what is the new practices that bring us forward into a regenerative future for all of life. And that brought us straight to Yurok country to learn here from the wisdom of your ancestral land and from the people, your elders, here in this beautiful part of the world.
And I almost forgot to introduce my daughter as well, Nayeli. She's making an appearance for the first time on Drum Circle News, and Rama's getting to hold her and get all that love energy in. Do you want to hop in here and give yourself an introduction?
Yes, what we want to say is that this is a real highlight for us. We met you around the first week that we came to Ashland. This is the 17th country on the One Home Journey. And in every country, we know that what's essential if you want to answer the central question of our quest to every country on earth, which is how do we transform our divided and endangered world into an inclusive, regenerative home for the entire family of life, all of humanity, but really for humanity to rediscover how to live in unity with all life. And what we found from all of our work over the last 30, 40 years on transformation of societies after war, after cataclysms of all kinds, is the starting place is to go to those people who've been doing it for tens of thousands of years, which is the indigenous people in each country. And that's why we were so keen when we met you and you expressed the interest in talking to us, that we are now here with the 3 generations. And very present with us are your grandparents, because your father has been telling us how when he was 1, his parents left him with his grandparents to go and fight for their rights when your grandfather was coming back himself from serving in the army. So there's something very powerful about being here and seeing how this ancestral wisdom, the indigenous wisdom, which was almost wiped off the surface of the earth because of our current systems of living and being, our economies, our politics, are now being passed down, are being revived and passed down. So on our One Home journey, what we're doing is learning from the wisdom of nature. So here being at the mouth of the Klamath River, where your father has worked, where you are now working, as the river enters the ocean, listening to the indigenous wisdom and hearing how it can guide us now into the future. Working with kids, right? Unfortunately, we don't always get them as adorable and as young, but working with young children and asking them to share with us their dream of the future and to draw it and paint it for us. Working with youth who've gone through marginalization, war, conflict, isolation, with women who are emerging from violence and oppression, to really say, you are the ones who know why this world needs to be transformed. And you have within you the deep wisdom, the knowledge, the purpose and potential to create that future. Taking that step forward for yourself, but knowing that we are all in it together and connecting people across every man-made border so we can become again, as your father said earlier today, a family of life. That's really our goal, that we live again as one family of life in deep reverence and gratitude for this earth
That's
that we
beautiful.
live upon.
So the United Nations recently recognized you in an article writing about your work. Could you tell everyone what that work was, what they recognized you for, and actually how did you come across the UN and meet them as well? I'm curious.
Well, you know, the original home for humanity is on a little French mountain not far away from Geneva. So we are in close contact also with the Geneva-based United Nations institutions, and they invited us for a conversation, for a deep conversation. It was in fact one of their magazines called UN Today. And they were so captivated by the vision of the One Home Journey, a journey that brings all cultures and countries on the planet together into a common narrative for how we are building the future, that they called the article that ultimately appeared in their magazine a planetary journey to rescue the Agenda 2030. And we feel that in particular our emphasis on culture, on the deep narratives that we find in all the localities of the world, if we bring them to the surface in their way that they can help us to contribute to a regenerative future, then we find the keys and the answers in the people who are living the truth, who are living practices that can bring us into the future. And that is what this journey is about, and that is how we can, I feel, make a meaningful contribution to what the UN calls an Agenda 2030. We see it as one which is much more one of the people
the
of,
culture.
of unity in our glorious diversity.
So
And
I
maybe
love
threw
your.
in, so sorry, dear. You know, just your question about the UN. So I take 2 steps back. That funnily enough, my first job between my master's and my PhD was with a UN international organization. It was called the Commission on Global Governance, and it was at the end. This is way before your time, of the Cold War. You know, when we believed that it might be possible for at least the nations to come together in common purpose. And what the commission did was to imagine that future of us living together in actual cooperation and not competition, and came up with a report that was presented to the 50th anniversary of the United Nations. Unfortunately, over the years, so I've collaborated a lot with the UN over the decades. I've luckily never worked inside the UN. I've never been paid, let's say, by the UN, but been on many councils and in advisory capacities and so on. And what's super interesting is right now our co-chair of our movement, who's been with us in every country, he's shown up when we have our final, what we call the Earth Family Call, where we gather the wisdom and share the wisdom and the innovation. So the young people like you, that's why you could see we got really excited meeting you, Dylan, because we really saw, and I want all your viewers and many, many more to come to know this. So when we heard about your initiatives, when we heard just about what you're doing with this show, you know, the drumming circles, getting people together, collecting this wisdom and sharing it, but also your initiative to connect the tribes together for food sovereignty, you know, working in this way, that felt that's the kind of youth initiatives we want to highlight into the world and share. You know, that's really the future. So it's the indigenous wisdom we receive and the ways in which young people find their spark in bringing it into the future. So what's interesting is our co-chair, Yusuf Mahmood, Alexander, you could perhaps share about him, you know, his transformation from the United Nations to this, what could we say, the united peoples and cultures of the earth. So if you wanted to share about Yusuf.
Well, it's probably beautiful given that we are here on the territory of the Yurok tribe. The notion of, and this is a passion that certainly also our co-chair, Dr. Yusuf Mahmood, has, a former Undersecretary General of the United Nations, to see that we need to move also together into a future where we transcend these harsh borders of nation states, but rather actually come together in a more planetary community, in a way that we understand, learn from each other, and build on the diversity that all our cultures hold, and use this shared wisdom to bring to co-create what we call home on earth, given that we are home for humanity and that we are moving from nation to the power of the people, which is and lies in their home grounds, from where they can make their own contributions together with their four-legged friends and animals. We have here the two beautiful dogs of Dylan with us who push us a little bit over the screen.
Yeah.
But they had to be part of this story because the future story is one that includes all of us.
Mojo and Yuku, my two pups right here, they're pocket bullies. Well, I love your guys' descriptive words and your vision. And part of what I try to do with this podcast is communicate this higher frequency description of our vision and translate that into a physical, tangible experience that people can digest. Because in this realm, in this world, a lot of people don't necessarily see through word what that impact really is. They need to understand the tangible, physical, what have we done in this reality. And so that I ask you, what is the tangible things that you've done around the world with Indigenous communities?
Rama, go ahead.
Yeah. So what is very, very beautiful is, first and foremost, we have had deep time with Indigenous communities, starting from the very first countries in Southern Africa. So we started in the cradle of humanity, where our ancestral home to all of us, where we all came from. What is also very beautiful is, on the one hand, learning from them, learning about their ways, learning about how they have restored and are in the process of restoring, preserving again the cultures, the ways of their ancestors that were destroyed. But what is of particular pride to us is, within that, as we go country to country, we are supporting what we call Homes for Humanity, which means recognizing initiatives which really show us what living as a family of life, living the interconnected wholeness of life would look like. These are places where you feel a sense of belonging, where you feel a sense of inclusion, where, because you feel belonging, you find the space to imagine and envision the kind of world you want to live in. You feel the courage to step into your full potential and fulfill your purpose. So Homes for Humanity are places we see around the world where people support individual transformation, community transformation and renewal, cultural renewal, and are lighthouses for planetary transformation. And what we take particular pride in is the number of our Homes for Humanity, existing organizations and initiatives which were initiated and are led by Indigenous communities. And what we particularly like, since I'm holding your beautiful girl and with you and your father here, is we have some communities we've recognized their initiatives as Homes for Humanity, which are led by elders, like the Mothong Sanctuary in South Africa, one of the oldest mountains of the earth, and where a young man who was a fighter against apartheid for freedom became now a healer who's restored the sanctuary. There are Homes for Humanity. Oh, my darling. The moment may have come to find mummy, but she's quite happy. She's doing quite well. Otherwise, you may have a little surprise. Oh, yes.
Yeah, so she can go get bundled up. Yeah.
This is getting just a bit chilly. So we have some which we have honored and recognized as Homes for Humanity, which are led by elders, like Ntate Mabena in South Africa, who has restored a dumping ground, which is what the sacred mountain has become, into both a healing sanctuary, where he and his wife practice Indigenous African healing, but also a nature sanctuary, which has restored all, they had, when they were on the call with us on Mother Earth Day, they were coming from planting 43 trees in that one day. So two initiatives which are run by women, by Indigenous women, again in the Venda land in South Africa is one of them, many of them across the world, and initiatives led by youth. So for example, in Nepal, there's an entire family, but the youngest son, who's 21, is now initiating the youth of that community, which, like the Yurok, are now down to just 6,000 people belonging to the Gandharva community, which were reduced from being the mythological divine musicians whose music was so divine that the gods would fall silent. And they were reduced to utter untouchability and poverty. And now the youth are involved with the elders in reviving and restoring this community, bringing livelihoods, but again, because everything we do is about the whole of life. So it's combining the inner purpose with nature restoration of the ecology of food systems, to the cultural renewal, to education, that of learning from the wisdom of the elders, to economic, political, and social transformation. So that's, I think, what we take particular pride in. We are not only focused on Indigenous-led initiatives, because we want to say that, in the end, as many Indigenous elders say, we are all Indigenous.
That is the
to the planet.
Reindigenization movement, and we can't leave people out of it.
Yes.
No matter how long ago their Indigenous roots have been left behind, we got to lead everybody back to that teaching.
And as you are saying this is so incredibly important. We believe if you do not have contact and you're not in touch with your own origins, you cannot tap into your own originality. And as we are building the future, we will need this kind of sourcing in who we are on our deepest level. And in that sense, the indigenous path is a path relevant for each and everyone. And the Home for Humanity movement and the One Home Journey is driven by many principles, but two which are important in relation to the question you're asking, what's real in this and how do we work with this? It's embodiment. So we are looking for these embodied new practices or ancient new practices that can take us forward, and participation. How do young, older people from around the world who are keen to make their own contribution from their own home ground into the future, how do they learn and build and work with such people? So we are building a planetary community into which everyone is invited. It's free, it is open, it is shared. It's in a way a gift of humanity for humanity, but impact-driven, embodied, real, and inviting everyone into co-creation.
And so, how would the audience reach you and reach this movement?
Yeah.
So first and foremost, you could just write to us. If you have access to email, it's just welcome@homeforhumanity.earth. We are on social media as well, and we really welcome you joining in whichever way is comfortable for you. We are on YouTube. I believe it's YouTube at Home for Humanity, OneHomeJourney, on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn as just at Home for Humanity. And what we also just welcome is people knowing that every single person is a part of the journey by definition, and can simply join us online, join us when you are in your country, join us when you're, when a country you would like to discover. That's what we really welcome. And something you'd asked earlier is how are we doing it? And a beautiful part which comes back to Indigenous culture is all of this we've practiced since the beginning, what we call a gifting culture, which is, we've created a world which has become so transactional. So obviously they want to be a part of this.
He wants to participate.
Hey, Calvin, will you come grab them real quick? Yeah, they're gonna get a little wild with a bunch of people coming. They want to be everybody's friend.
Emotional support for everyone.
So just to get that the point of the gifting culture across. So what's happened now is that everything has become so transactional that people think if I don't have money, I can't fulfill my vision. I can't fulfill my purpose. I can't make a contribution. I can't be part of creating the future. And what we've learned in all of our life's work, because we've worked in some of the most difficult, war-torn, crisis-affected communities in the world, is absolutely not. The greatest human beings who've done the most in the world have come from having nothing or losing everything. And that's where they found their true selves. So what you were also speaking about, how can we relate to that highest in ourselves and in the universe? And our experience, definitely mine working in conflict, was really that when everything was gone, people came, individually came face to face with who they really are, the greatness of the universe and the greatness within them, which was love and to serve others. And from that were born the most extraordinary initiatives. Often that's why we call it Home for Humanity. In their own, shack, hut, bombed in roof, that's where it began. But because of that power of love and care, it spread and it became a new paradigm. So our message to everyone, and that's why adopting this gift economy is, no, we have inside each of us the greatest gift we need. That's who you are and what your purpose is and the gift you bring to life. And it's with that that we've traveled everywhere, being welcomed into people's homes. We are traveling with a minimal budget of just our own savings and a few gifts we've received in financial terms, but the amount tenfold more. We calculated that just in the 3 months we've been in some of the world's poorest countries, the amount that we received in hospitality and people, organizing their communities for us, having shared meals, would probably come to about, what was it?
Wow.
400 or 500,000.
It's about a factor of 1 to 10. For every dollar spent, there's about 10 which are gifted into the journey in kind support, actually, in order to make this really a planetary, collectively held journey, endeavor, future building expedition.
Yeah, Native Americans can definitely appreciate the idea of a gift economy. There's actually a Native American author. Her name is Robin Kimmerer, and she has a book called Braiding Sweetgrass.
Yes.
Okay, so you're
Very, very
familiar.
well.
Yeah, a system of reciprocity, a gift economy, where it just creates this to give and to receive, and then when you give, when you receive, it makes you want to give. And yeah, I think that's beautiful. Is that where you read that from, or is it just another supporting book of?
I mean, it's a book which resonates deeply, but that's what we've experienced. So I'm wearing these clothes to meet your father today because as soon as we entered this indigenous village, this community deep in the forest in Kenya, the entire village, the elders, they came down dancing and singing the welcome songs, weaving, braiding our names into their ancestral songs, and they dressed me in their clothes. And of course, this was tied around my head, and gave me a basket because, of course, the woman receives a basket full of mangoes from their fresh harvest, and that's what we've received. That no one considers themselves poor in that sense because they know they have that gift of receiving. That's absolutely what we are spreading. And
Rama,
that's why we welcome everyone, because everyone has something to give.
Yeah,
and
I would add, actually, building on what you shared, the indigenous worldview, we have worked actually across the planet with, and many of them are embodied in the Homes for Humanity, which are now part of the movement, who worked locally in developing economic approaches and practices which are in resonance with their own deep cultural beliefs. And many work based on the principle of reciprocity, whether it's in Egypt, the economy of love, hosted by Sechem, or in Nigeria, hosted by and developed by Pax Herbals, an approach to economy which is called communitalism. In Zimbabwe, one which is called legacy-driven economics, Nakanomics. And in Sri Lanka, one which is deeply based on Buddhist philosophy, with our Home for Humanity called Savodaya, and the approach is called Arthadharma. So you can hear the cultural ring that each of these economic approaches has, stewarding the earth, hosting actually a mutual benefit-driven local community, but also caring for the planet as a whole. And that is what we feel so much in the indigenous perspective. You see the whole while you care for the part which represents the whole.
Yeah.
Yes, and that's what we imagine. That imagine if the future, it could be these kinds of economies, so not one economic system that holds the whole world hostage and judges people according to how much you have, but rather this multiplicity of knowledge systems, of languages, of economic models, of governance models, so we really can appreciate the best of everything, and everyone's culture can be to the fore. So even in economics, the scope for innovation is extraordinary, drawing from our cultures and then innovating from that. In fact, we have our gift basket right here, and if you want, I could just go over and show it to your guests, because it goes with us everywhere, and it's a symbol. It's an indigenously made gift basket woven in India, but it goes from community to community, and depending on the community, we either buy or receive gifts, and then it moves on to other cultures and other countries. And It's just a way of showing on the journey the philosophy of the entire journey, that we are one family, and sharing this gift that we have, with the gift of life we receive from Earth. Yeah, that we can live in a way that everyone is fulfilled, and everyone lives a life of
Yeah, I
dignity
think
and
they
well-being.
would love to see the gift basket, and I think that would be a great ending shot and a great way to end this conversation. Was just to show a gift
Fabulous.
basket and then give gratitude to the audience, and then. But this is the gift basket, and where did you receive this again?
So this one we got in India.
So
from
this
an
one we
indigenous
got in
community that does
India
this kind
from
of
an
art, and
indigenous
it really
community that
shows
does this kind of
Amazing.
art, and it
unity of
really
the family
shows
of life.
the
And
unity
this
of the
is
family of life.
a symbol of. It looks like a birth, right?
You know, I always thought it was. It's interesting because it could be a musical instrument. I thought it was plants. You know, the harvest.
It feels a bit
like
like
the
the
harvest,
like
right?
the origin of life from which everything unfolds in, and we are in
And there
this
you see there's
unfolding
also a
Okay.
process
giving
as a
yeah. So the trees, the plants, but we also wanted to share with all of your audience
Oh my
something
gosh.
quite amazing. So that's Mother Earth, beautiful piece of art that we received also as a gift from an artist who's devoted his life to showing our relationship with the earth. And this has now been touched and held by, I mean, probably
10,000
close to
people.
10,000
Yeah.
people in
Oh,
the
wow.
17 countries from, should we just say
Yeah,
the
well, the
countries
journey
once,
started
Alexander?
with coming out of Geneva, but it was rooted in the cradle of humanity: Zimbabwe, South Africa, Lesotho, Tanzania, Uganda, Kenya.
Kenya, and then across the Indian Ocean to Sri Lanka, India, Nepal, then all the way to
Aotearoa,
Aotearoa, which
New
is
Zealand.
the Maori name for
yeah.
New Zealand, Australia, Japan, Mexico, and then we came here because our second co-chair, Jean Houston, is in Ashland, where we had the good fortune to meet you and to meet your
Wow.
father and the
That is so
elders of
wild. I
Yurok.
want to point out how it's not random. It is synchronistic that they're traveling around the world. And I planned a powwow for Southern Oregon University. I'm their event planner for the Native American Student Union. And we had the 32nd annual powwow, which I had the pleasure and the hand of helping put that together. And I ran into you two there. The president of my university, Southern Oregon University, introduced me to you two. I was just happened to be standing there, and they were trying to take a photo, and I was like, "Oh, I got you guys," just being nice. And then we talked, and now we're here. Yeah.
And just what the other message I'd love to leave this with is what excited us about your initiative is, since we've been meeting so many Indigenous communities around the world, imagining your initiative really being planetary and bringing your youthful energy, your depth of being, your commitment to not just your tribe, but to the tribe of life on earth, to really be making that a force to bring together this Indigenous wisdom. So we see what you've started here as being a planetary force for good.
Wow.
So this, we would love to see this in your hand.
Oh my gosh.
And in that spirit, the drum circle, the work you are doing, is really also re-enlivening the human heart. We feel that very strongly. We are grateful for this incredible time together, and we are going to share the story of the Yurok and the story of what you are doing with the world as the journey unfolds. And everyone is invited to join us.
Well, the story that represents the Yurok the best is we do our jump dance ceremony to bring the earth into balance every year, and we do the white deer dance to cleanse the river of negative energies and evil spirits. And what that energy talks about is really, if you think about our life as the world and our bodies as the world and the universe as a giant living organism, a one operating system, we need to find balance within ourselves. And once we find balance within ourselves, we can then bring balance to the world around us. And that's what Yuroks are about. And that's what I want to hope to bring to the world is balance.
In that spirit.
Thank you for watching Drum Circle News.